Welcome to Cancer and Peace. My name is Sean Stewart, and I'm here with my good friend Peter Scalzo on his 19-year cancer journey. And we're going to just add a little something new today. You know, we've been calling this Cancer and Peace for quite a while. We thought it would be good to add a byline. And the byline is navigating our biggest walls. And this has a lot of meaning because we think that a lot of our conversations are about going through the wall, the journey through the wall. And this concept is something we want to re-talk about, rethink, and it's such a big part of our own personal development, spiritual development, your inner person, that we want to just reinvigorate this, I guess, is the point of this conversation today is. And I know you have thoughts that you're ready to kind of kick around a little bit. So we're going to discuss this journey through the wall, navigating the wall. It's just such a big thing. And I think it's so little talked about in at least spiritual circles as a primary. And yet I think it might be one of the biggest primary things in your own development. And maybe we're just ignorant to it as it's happening a little bit. So you can share some thoughts just to kick us off.
Yeah, I think that walls are something that are so common. And for instance, all through Scripture, the biblical characters had walls that they faced. But I was thinking about this in my own life, my own development, spiritually and emotionally. I would view a wall as, in the least, inconvenient, and in the most insurmountable. And it would be like, this can't be God's will for my life. Something's wrong here. I don't know how to navigate this thing. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that happens at the wall. But I think at the outset, I've come to a place now where although the wall is painful, in many aspects, it is a blessing. And if I navigate the wall in reliance on my higher power, Jesus Christ, in a position of dependence, and we can talk about what that looks like, that the result can be a deeper relationship, a deeper intimacy with him and also others. But I was thinking about this wall concept and how cancer has been a major wall in my life. I mean, 19 years, and I had to drop my legal career and change who I am, really, basically, and what I do with my time. I was put on disability. And this wall represented something that I had no control over, because I think control is a big part of our discussion, in the sense of maybe some walls we make poor choices and a consequence is a wall that is put up. But I think most walls in my life have been walls that are thrust upon me. Like, for instance, a marriage that ended. Did I have a part in that? Yes. But a lot of it was outside of my control at all. And a daughter who went through a 6-year drug addiction, I had no control over that. And then cancer is one of those things which was thrust upon me. I had no control over that. And so these represented major walls for me. And you know, the concept of, did I bounce off the wall, or did I go through the wall? Did I process it? And
So let's talk about that too. What bouncing off means versus going through. Because I think you said something early on. It was, as you started the discussion, was we have major choices at the wall.
Yeah.
And so, and I think this is kind of what you're getting to, is like when you're at the wall, or major changes or events happen when you're at the wall. So you come to a wall, walls are brought into your life.
Yeah.
And then what does it mean to bounce off the wall? What are the decisions? Why is this important?
I think for me in my life, what it means to bounce off the wall would be not to deal with those things inside of me. In other words, those emotions that are bubbling up, maybe fear, anger, whatever, sadness, not dealing with them and just numbing them. I am really, drugs and alcohol are not a big issue for me, but more in the maybe lust and those other, maybe defaulting into work performance and some of these other things, watching TV all day or something like that. In other words, numbing myself and hoping that it will just, the wall won't be there anymore, but just not dealing with it. And so, but processing the wall for me, like for instance, the marriage wall for me was, I was in such, the wall represents a place where I have no answers, and I don't know where God is.
Yes. Is this almost like grieving though, in the sense that,
Yes.
so you've been, an event happens that's out of your control most of the time. Some walls you may have, like you said, you might have initiated it by bad decisions, but you're at a point where you don't have control for a wall. And so you have to make a decision though, am I going to lean into the implications of this, or am I going to avoid, numb, distract, or even try to come up with a solution that is not something that would actually deal with the wall, but it is a false solution, I guess. And so I think we like to think of this, and I'll give the more example of this is, so if you hit a wall in your life, most of the time it's a invitation to journey into what's really going on inside of you.
Yeah.
And one of the ways that you can come up with the solution is to say, well, I'm actually not willing to look inside. It's too painful to look inside. And so I'm going to go to, well, maybe I just need to do a religious course. Maybe if I learn how to pray better, if I learn how to read my Bible, or, whatever it is, some kind of religious activity, it's a false solution to a real problem, but it is a way to at least be doing something. It feels like, hey, well, I'm making progress. I'm avoiding this, or I'm trying to deal with it. But the reality is that you haven't really addressed the root of what's going on with you, which is at the wall.
Yeah. So, and I like how you said the reality of it. And I think one of the coping mechanisms I've had before is to deny that reality. And I might put like a spiritual spin on it. Oh, God's got this. I don't, which, I mean, he does, but I'm still not dealing with the reality of what's going on inside of me and what the situation really is. And so for me, journeying through the wall has always, I've learned, because I got into recovery with the marriage wall. And in recovery, I finally did an inventory of my life. I looked inward. I started to allow emotions to bubble up. To actually feel them. I had not done that before. I buried them, thinking I'm not supposed to feel fear, anger, and sadness. Those are not emotions I should be feeling. And when in reality, I needed to accept the reality of those emotions in my life and process them and actually deal with those emotions, to accept the fact that I was struggling with fear, especially in the cancer space, anger, sadness with the marriage space with my daughter, and to not let those emotions rule over me, but to process them. And for me as a spiritual man, to use God's word to bring truth into that reality.
Why do you suppose we call it journeying through the wall, though? This is such an interesting.
Yeah.
I liked, you said something earlier on. It was like something that seemed insurmountable.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why for that is because it's out of your control. So if you can't control it, it must be insurmountable.
Yeah.
But why did we say the journey through the wall?
Yeah. I think it's because it is a process, a journey through this major issue that's going on that you have no control over. And it's, what tools do I have to be able to actually journey on this path that goes through the wall? Because on the other side of the wall, the wall may, like the cancer wall for me, is still there. In fact, there's some newer things that happened that maybe are mini walls or just added on to this major wall called cancer. But now I know I haven't bounced off this wall. I've processed all these things going on in me. I've done it with my higher power. I've done it within community too. And I've asked myself the hard questions. I haven't denied the reality of this cancer diagnosis and what it means. And so I've come out, I mean, you know, they sent me home twice to do an end-of-life process. And I could have bounced off that wall then and said, hey, I'm just not going to deal with this. I know of one person that had, I mean, just comes to my mind, but they had a terminal, you know, diagnosis, and they ended their life. So it was something that they couldn't cope with, and they actually ended their life. And so the issue is, this is a wall that's beyond what I can handle myself. I mean, I think that's been my cancer experience, has been that I can't do this wall on my own. And that's where my relationship with my higher power comes. And then it's this, Lord, how do I journey through this wall? So I don't know if that answers the question, but
Yeah, I was.
I don't know if you were looking for like actual tools, like how do you?
No, I'm actually
journey through?
thinking more at the concept level to start out with right now, and that is, you know, we talk about walls and the what does it represent, and it's not something that we bring in. I've always thought about, hey, if walls are such a great tool for development, for developing your inner person or who you are, then why don't we synthesize it? In other words, why don't we create walls so that people can grow and develop? And the answer is because these are actually situations and things that are out of our control and that only God brings into our lives. And they could look like circumstances. And so I look at your cancer journey and say, yes, you had a wall brought into your life, meaning that something that looks insurmountable that's out of your control. And then as you start looking at the detail of that, the granularity is like, well, if you ignore that wall, in other words, you could just say, yeah, somebody diagnosed you with cancer. It looks really bad. I'm just going to ignore it. What happens is the greater wall always comes. Or I think this is the case, and that anytime you ignore a wall, a greater wall is going to head your way, and it's going to look even higher, one that may even kill you. Like if you ignore cancer, the wall of this being terminal is going to come pretty fast, or at some point in time, and then a greater wall is going to be there, and you have to face that. But what does it mean to journey through the wall? And so I was just thinking about it is when you journey through the wall, it's like you come to this structure, this problem, which we're representing with a structure, and you don't know that you can go through. In other words, it may look impenetrable in some ways, but as you get closer to it, you find that there's a crack or a seam, and you know that wall, on the other side of that wall, is a destination that you're trying to go to. And you take the very next step, and that might be with tools, you know, a pick or whatever, but you're really going to, but it represents pain, hard work, sweat, tears, blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah. And you may choose that you don't, that's what I call bouncing off the wall. Is like, I just don't feel like doing that right now. I'm going to avoid that work if possible. Is bouncing off the wall, or I'm going to see if I can find an easier solution than what that represents. But going through the wall may mean you're going to have to move a few boulders, which are going to be really hard to move, or rubble. And as you go into that, there's no guarantee what's on the other side. And you may be in the middle of it. The wall may collapse on you, meaning that an example that might be is I'm going to take this cancer treatments. I'm going to start looking at my inner journey of my own life and my emotions. And you may lose your life in the middle of that process. There's all that unknown. But the journey to the wall is a willingness to start into what looks like the impossible, and whatever the very next step, that crack and seam, looks like, you approach it with, I'm actually going to take on that pain, that suffering, because there's something in this that is worth digging for, worth exploring.
Yeah, I think that's good, Sean. And what resonates with me is other themes of episodes, which for me is acceptance, surrender, and trust as far as journeying through the wall. The first step for me has been acceptance of what's going on, the reality of it. And that's always working through the grieving cycle for me, because there's acceptance involves, I might be afraid of what's happening. I might be sad. I might be angry. I might try to bargain it away, whatever, deny it, right?
Denial is that first step. Is the first thing is if I deny it,
yeah,
then I'm not even going to touch the grieving cycle. I'm just going to move on to my
right
coping, and the bigger wall has to come.
Right. And so acceptance is a process, and for me, involves dealing with those emotions and accepting the reality of what's going on. You know, kind of like, God, grant me the serenity to accept those things I can't change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. You know, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace. I think that's kind of like a theme within it. But and then once I understand, okay, like cancer is my new normal. I'm a cancer patient, right?
Yeah.
And then it's, what do I do with it? And for me as a Christian, it's, Lord, give me the grace to surrender and turn this over to you and trust you in it, no matter what the outcome is. To take myself out of trying to control it for myself and put it in your hands completely. Lord, my life is in your hands. My future, my relationships, everything is in your hands.
Your cancer journey, let's just explore that for a second. So you come to this wall.
Yeah.
And at some point, even bigger walls came where it actually had all the terminal,
the first part, the first 10 years of my cancer journey was, okay, we've got a cancer diagnosis and we're going to fix it because we're going to surgically remove it. Really difficult surgery.
Still a wall, though.
Still a wall.
Your step in that wall was to take the next step of, okay, I'm going to do the treatments and I'm going to let that process play out. And so, but it was
surgical solutions for the cancer.
Yeah, one that seemed more hopeful.
Yes, yeah.
The other side of the wall seemed more hopeful, yes.
Yes, and in 2015, that's when the wall became 100 feet high.
Yes.
Peter, it's metastatic, a 5% survival rate. Sloan is advising me to tell you to go home and call hospice. That wall was I could not scale that wall.
Answer this question. Did you go home and call hospice?
No.
The opportunities came along. Because this is an interesting point. It's like, I think about your cancer journey in that sense is you were advised to go home and call hospice, and then a crack showed up in the wall.
What happened was, he had one of the most extensive surgeries he's ever done, and he had removed all the cancer he could see. There wasn't anything like clear margins.
Yeah.
And back then, bladder cancer didn't have a marker blood test where you could just test the blood and say, oh, it's still there. We knew it was there because we didn't have clean margins or anything like that, and it was all over. But we didn't have visible evidence. So the 3 major cancer centers would not treat me. They wouldn't give me any treatment.
Yeah.
And my kidneys were damaged anyway, so chemotherapy was not a viable option for me. And so it was just a wait and see thing. So I kept working and feeling terrible, fatigued.
Yeah.
I knew something was going on
in
my health, but I kept working, kept going, and it was about 1.5 years when it was all throughout that region with tumors as big as a tennis ball, that in 2017, it's like a year and 9 months later, that then it was, okay, we're done here.
The walls were huge there. So you defined the wall well. You defined it being
go on
out
disability.
of your control. Go on disability. I guess the interesting thing is, like, you had choices to make to enter into at that point in time. And
I was with my surgeon the other day, and he said, you're such an anomaly. This is such uncharted territory. But you were done back then. 2017, you were done.
The interesting thing about, because of Cancer and Peace journey, and it's a journey through this, or navigating this wall in your life, and you described walls that happened. One wall was the diagnosis, and then a journey through with medical alternatives that were available to you that seemed promising and with hope. Then you have a period where the surgical solutions are gone, and the wall seemed so tall. And as the tumors grew big, the wall looked unsurmountable at some point in time.
Yeah, because medically for them, my oncologist and surgeon were there, that they knew chemo would be ineffective against this cancer, and plus my kidneys could not take it. My kidneys would have been destroyed from it, and they didn't have any other viable options, and there was no surgical solution. It was metastatic cancer all throughout. So it was basically just, then it was quit work, go home, contact hospice.
So I want to now move from medical to your inner man for a few seconds now, because you're at that wall.
Mm-hmm.
What did it mean to journey through, navigate through the wall then?
It was horrible at first.
And why? What was, I mean, it was...
I let go of any hope of trying to live. I figured we're done. And I experienced a huge amount of fear and sadness, and anger too, but the overriding was fear. What's going to happen to my family, and
that's such a beautiful, not beautiful in that, your ability to share. To me, this is a really, really important point that you just said, and I want to just pause on that for a second, because for all of us in our life, the wall. We've been talking in physical terms, and then we talked in medical terms, but now we're at the heart of what I think journey through the wall is, and it's facing your biggest fear at this moment in time. And then the willingness to step into that fear, that takes great courage, or it takes great strength. It takes a combination of a lot of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so the fact that you pointed it to fear is really such an important aspect, as you recognize your biggest enemy wasn't at this point in the journey through the wall, was now fear.
Yeah, my three greatest fear, like if you ask me as a young person, what would be your three greatest fears? It would be to get divorced, to have a child that would pass, and to have myself be diagnosed with a life-threatening illness.
So now you've faced your three greatest walls.
Yeah, fortunately, my daughter,
she didn't pass,
lived through her overdose.
But you had to face that wall as she was going through this, whether or not she would survive this addiction.
Yeah,
that's fascinating. And
but I think that 2015 life-changing surgery, the fear was so thick that I lost my footing. I gave in and dwelled in that place. And when I was in that abyss, I'll call it a dark abyss of fear, I was unhappy, to say the least. My life felt like a wreck. And, I also had a crisis of faith, like, what is this faith thing all about? What is it? Where is God in this? And it was just a huge crisis of belief, of emotions clashing, and of not having a footing. I was adrift. I didn't know where to land. And that's when our buddy came down. He had gotten down on his knees, because he said, he texted me and he said, how are you doing? I said, it's dark and getting darker. And that was a truthful statement from me. I could at least express that, the darkness. And he came down with a journal, and I was like, I can't process this. But after about 4 days, I was in ICU, then still there. And so I started to write down my raw feelings.
That was your first step into the wall.
Yes.
That was like you were at the wall of decision.
Right.
This is the moment where you started stepping into the wall.
Yep. And expressing my anger and sadness and fear. And as I began to do that, to be honest about what was going on inside of me, that's when God unlocked something. And all of a sudden, his scriptural truths started to pour out. And I felt his presence. But it was a process.
It was, and we've talked about, well, going through the wall is a journey, right?
Yeah.
It's not a split second.
Yeah.
Because that actually ties into a question I was kind of wanting to go towards is, are you on the other side of the wall?
So
You laughed.
the physical wall still stands, but yes, I mean,
Well, but we're not talking about the physical wall now. We're talking
yes.
about
The
other wall.
I'm so excuse me, I'm so used to processing those raw emotions. Now it's done on a daily basis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm used to feeling them and processing them. Like, recently I had a long discussion with my surgeon, and I always thought I could get a new kidney if my kidneys were complete failures, which they're going towards. Found out I'm not a candidate for a new kidney. And he said, dialysis, you'll feel really sick about that. So the future prospect is not good and I had to stop treatment for a while because of my kidney health. So I'm really struggling with kidney health right now. And so I had to deal with the reality of that wall.
So let's talk
What
about
does that mean?
That's a physical wall.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that you felt the inner wall of fear.
I did. I felt fear.
And now how did
I felt sadness.
Yeah.
I processed it fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm.
What am I afraid of, Lord? What's happening here? And
you processed it.
yes. Yeah.
Sounds very like you're at a meat packing something. You processed it means that you were able to.
I exposed it.
You exposed it. You felt it.
I didn't deny the reality of, hey,
Okay,
I've got some fear here
Yep.
and anger and sadness.
Yep.
Those tough emotions.
Yep.
And then I have a wealth of what God's done for me in the past, and I have a foundation of processing and journeying through these emotions, and it's kind of like a habit now to process them. So I was able to get to a place of, okay, these are the scriptural truths. I mean, a fallback position for me has been, if all fails and I pass, and God's going to be with me in that process. Jesus will be with me in that process.
That's your plan B.
Yeah. 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 Well, and that's the thing. God keeps me living all my doctors and doctors, I'm going to say all around the world, are shocked at, my case is talked about. It's probably my surgeon's number one case that he talks about, because I'm such an anomaly medically. And I don't know.
I'm exploring something that's with you because this wall is, and what I've identified, at least in this conversation,
Mm-hmm.
that I wanted to focus on was this aspect of walls representing fear. And that fear isn't unreal. In other words, the fear is based upon a physical reality that you're going through. And so, even as of this last few weeks, the idea that your life is still threatened by kidney failure, there's not a solution that's medical of, hey, I can just get a kidney transplant or something like that. And so you're now having to face that fear again of, hey, maybe this is getting close to the end of my earthly existence or bodily existence.
Right.
And then you said I processed it. And so, and I was wanting to just get a little further to processing. And the reason why this, I think it's important, is there could be this idea of I'm not supposed to feel fear.
Yeah.
And I love the fact that you said process, because it's like, oh, I'm not going to feel reality. It's like all of us are going to fear when our lives are, I think we're biologically, there's also, chemical brain activity, things that happen that say, hey, when our life is threatened, we feel and we react to it. And you said, yes, that was real. And I've learned to process that. And I think it's important because it's how do you move forward in the wall? In other words, this is a new wall that's come. There's still life-threatening something, but you're functioning. So something is different, though, at where you're at in the progression of working through the wall than the first time this happened, because you're not incapacitated. You're saying
Right.
you're having a conversation with me and you're moving forward, but it's as if there's a different reality you're moving forward
Yeah.
in.
I think, like, my girlfriend asked me if I was upset about that news, and I said, yeah. I had always thought that I could. My sister offered me her kidney. You know what I mean? I always thought that was
Yeah.
an avenue medically for me.
Yeah.
Turns out it's not.
So you didn't deny the feelings of being upset. You are upset.
Yeah. And so I had a discussion with her and with the Lord, and it was, a part of it was, hey, I know you to be a loving God, and I know you to be in charge. And you could take this away right now. So can I trust you in this? Can I surrender, turn this over to you, and trust you in it? And the answer is yes. I've been doing that for some time now, and I can trust Jesus with this.
So I have a hard question.
Yeah.
I think it's a hard question anyway. How do you know that that's any different than the person that says, hey, I just needed to go read my Bible more and then I've had peace? In other words, how do you know that this is...
I think it's that it's the turning not only my life but also my will over to, I think there's a whole nother like choice capacity going on here, and I'm not choosing to like medicate it by more scripture or that kind of thing. I am choosing to actually turn this over to God, to place it in his hands and say, my life is yours. This situation is yours.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
and there is there's lots of peace that comes over with the fact that I have this relationship with Jesus, that I can turn it over to him. The question for me is, can I trust him? Is he trustworthy? That's the question that I have.
Oh, now we're in the sweet spot here.
Yeah.
Because you went from an activity and trying to put, it wasn't just a coping mechanism.
Right.
You went relational.
Yes.
The moment it's like, I have this relationship with him, and in that relationship, you're comfortable with all the outcomes, meaning that even if it's not the one that you've chosen,
right,
you're comfortable with all the outcomes. So it's not, this is my solution. It is, this is my reality, and it's a relational reality, not a coped reality.
Yeah.
I've got the best solution out there, and it is, do A, B, C. It's, no, I'm in relationship with somebody who has the ability to hold my heart and hold it well.
And so it's not academic.
Right.
It's an important distinction you're making, because it's not just, I'm going to read the scriptures more, which I believe are truth and there's value in it.
Sure.
This is...
Great tool, right?
Yes. This is, I have an intimacy with you, Jesus, and I'm actually going to let go and trust you with my life, my soul, my spirit. That's a whole nother dependency and intimacy.
And the journey through the wall is the process of learning how to trust.
Exactly.
How to let go, how to face fear with the one who has the ability to deal with real fear. But it doesn't mean that you get what you want. It doesn't mean the outcome is going to be the one you want.
Exactly.
In the sense of your plan. It means, no, I'm actually going to trust your plan because I know that you love me more than, it's a relational love that you can trust in.
Right. And I'm in this place of, so I've done that, and I do it. I have to do it a lot.
Yeah, well, because our plans are always different than God's plans. So it's now, you came to this realization, you had a plan, and that is, worst case, I get a kidney transplant and I'm on with the races. And kind of like, no.
Right.
That's actually not the plan.
Right.
You're going to have to actually wade into this, which is trusting me.
And the waiting, I mean, all through Scripture, we see people who have had to wait years upon years upon years.
Yeah.
Can I patiently wait? That's what endurance means. Can I have patience in my suffering? Can I suffer patiently?
While facing your biggest fear.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, it's
And
you
this
can
is
see
beyond me.
Yeah.
This is Christ in me and through me. That's an important distinction. I'm not doing this through my self-effort. There's no way. Because if it was up to my self-effort, I'd be crashing somewhere.
This is such a big concept, and I think we're scratching the surface of what it means to journey through the wall. I just wanted to get enough meat on this bone a little bit more so that we are in a position to talk about it more over the coming weeks, because I think journeying through the wall might be what really brings real faith. And what I mean by that is real trust and relationship into people's life, because it's one thing to intellectualize and say, I want to go down this road. I want to have a relationship with God or with Christ or with somebody, a higher power. It's another thing to literally let go of control, face your biggest fears, and relationally trust this higher power with the very next breath, so to speak, and to get to where you're functioning because of that, not because you think you have a solution that you can control and rely upon. It is completely in his hands. And I think that's why we call this Cancer and Peace. Is why we're adding this little byline of journeying through the wall.
That's why I love the recovery space and the cancer space, because it's an opportunity to get to the point where you really understand what it means to be powerless, right? And then that's a springboard, poverty of spirit, to be able to turn your life and will over to the care of God. And I think that we want to avoid walls, of course. That's our main MO. For me it is. Yet God...
It's the nature of fear, right?
Yes, yet God, this is the tough concept, allows walls in our life because, like Consider It All Joy, he wants us to grow up in him and to grow in intimacy with him. He wants a relationship just like I want a relationship.
Interesting that your three greatest fears are the things that you've had to face.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder if you really knew, not everybody knows their greatest fears, but if you really know your fears, if that's not what all of us are called to face in order to draw us into real trust and relationship.
Yeah.
But that's a bigger concept. And I think today, just getting a lot on the table here with your own journey and why this journey through the wall is so important. I think the big thing that we're inviting today is, if you're in a cancer journey, you're invited into a journey through the wall, and that's a journey to face your fear. And there's hope that there is cracks and fissures. It's going to be painful, but there's hope in the midst of that. And it's an invitation to go into that wall. Don't bounce off.
My mother, who I was the baby out of 4, and she and I were close. And I had my first cancer surgery when she was on her end of life with ovarian, and she had been to every known doctor. She understood every reality going on with her cancer. And my father and brother wanted another opinion. So she was at Yale, and she's sitting in a circle with like 5 doctors and them. And the same conclusion medically. And they said, do you have any questions? And Mom raises her hand and says, where can I find a good tuna on toast? That response spoke volumes to me. I've accepted where I'm at. I've dealt with the fear, anger, and sadness. And now I have so much time left. I don't know how much time.
Don't live it in fear. Go live life.
Where can I go have a good... I feel like a tuna on toast right now.
Yeah. And the encouraging thing about your life is that by doing that journey through the wall, you are an anomaly.
Yeah.
But there are people who are going through that, even medically, what looks like a 150-foot tall wall, that have made it through.
Yeah.
And not everybody, that's not the journey for everybody. But the point is that it's not so much about the medical journey as it is facing your biggest fear and learning how to relationally trust and grow in the midst of that. And that's
huge.
That's what sets apart almost every great person, like we were talking beforehand, we were looking at all these books in this library that we're sitting in, and every one of them represents somebody's passion or something that was so important as part of their life work that they took time. Every one of these books are published, meaning that in the midst of these works represents a person's life who leaned into something and took time to work through it, publish, get their ideas out there. And in our lives, there's something important for us to share, to express, to explore that's bigger than any one of these books.
Yeah.
Bigger than just a little small something. It represents something much bigger than that.
Yeah.
But you have to face your biggest fears. Because if you don't, nothing will ever get expressed of your life work. Nothing will ever be published, shown, exposed. And that's the encouragement today, is to journey through the wall. It's almost like publishing a book, only it's a book that's bigger and more important than anything that's in this library. Your life.
I don't know. Adventures in English literature.
Well, yes. Well, the shoes of the fisherman might be a little bit of a... We have fun reading these titles.
Yeah.
Sometimes we're like, what is that? Like there's one up there behind the cameras that says Edge City. I'm going to go get that book and find out what it is, because now the title has me intrigued. So, but I think we've kind of really introduced this topic again. And we're going to spend more time talking about the wall as we go forward. But we thank you for listening today.
Yeah, thank you.
So,
Blessings to you.
Have a great day, and we'll see you on the next podcast.
Yep. Thank you.